Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to look at Psalm 126. Psalm 126 is, of course, a short psalm. It's designated as a song of ascents, which it says at the very beginning, and that means that it was probably used on the way to worship in Jerusalem on the Israelites' yearly pilgrimage to the holy city of God, to Jerusalem. In other words, these psalms were traveling psalms. They were meant to be used on a journey. And that's actually important to note here at the beginning because the Psalms, like this one, aren't exclusively supposed to be used in the temple or the church or even for private devotion. All of the Psalms are intended to be used in our daily lives. They're meant to be prayers that become stuck in our minds and deep into our hearts so that we can pray them in all kinds of places and in all kinds of conditions. And so that's what this Psalm really is.
Now, Psalm 126, like so many other Psalms, it expresses a plea. But this Psalm is a little different in that it makes a case by telling a story. In the opening verses, the psalmist describes this incredible experience of restoration he has had in the past, where God was so good that it felt like a dream. People couldn't stop laughing and singing. And then the psalmist describes how this period of favor was so amazing that other nations, they took note and they said, look at what the Lord has done for them. Great things he has done for them. Now, the psalmist could be telling this story for a number of reasons. He could be saying to God, look, you were once good to me. Please do it again. Or he could simply be reminding himself of how amazing God truly is during a very difficult time, almost as if he's preaching to himself. But then in verse 4, we get to the primary point of the whole psalm, and that's the plea, where the psalmist says, restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the watercourses of the Negeb.
And that image that the psalmist uses, this plea, it is remarkable because it sets up the final stage of the psalm really well. The Negeb, as Colin just noted, is a dry and desert land where rain would only come in its proper season. However, when it did, watercourses and streams would appear, and around those streams, all kinds of plants would suddenly emerge, flowers and green plants and even some kinds of animal life. And you would have this place that was previously dry and barren suddenly become vibrant and full and beautiful. And so the psalmist basically says, God, restore us just like that. And then in those final two verses, he says, those who sow their tears will reap joy. In other words, those people who take their sorrows to God during the dry and barren times are actually planting the seeds to receive joy in its proper season.
Now that's daring claim to make. Those who sow with tears will reap with songs of joy. This intriguing and profound idea that we can sow, I mean, think about that, sow our tears like you would sow a seed. I think often when we think about our own sorrows and our own suffering, we tend to think of them as rather pointless these times in our life and potentially endless. But what the psalmist says is if we sow our tears, if we express our sorrows and our desires to God, then we can expect to eventually experience joy. That's the promise. Just like a farmer who would plan on the seasons in order to gather a crop, so we can invest our sorrows and our pain through prayer in order to eventually receive the joy that having a relationship with God inevitably brings.
That's right. And you see, Psalm 126 says that those times in your life that are so good, that are almost so wonderful, you think they're a dream. It says and affirms that those are actually real. They're not just a kind of nostalgia or fond remembering. Rather, if you recognize that there will be times of sorrow in your life, and you sow your tears by means of prayer and crying out to God, then He will bring you joy again. And of course, we see this most powerfully in the way that Jesus prays to His Father in heaven in Gethsemane and then the days leading up to His death, knowing full well that restoration and resurrection was inevitable. if he follows God, trusting in him alone, knowing that he could cry out and sow his own tears in the loving embrace of God the Father in heaven. And so what's true for him is true for you as well. We hope that you explore some of these concepts and ideas in your small group, and we hope that your conversation is rich. Thank you.